I mentioned this in my state of the channel a couple months ago, which is that I wanted to get into doing some reaction content. So this is going to be our first attempt at that. This is me reacting to Diablo 4 into the Endgame. You can find the link in the description of the video below. This is essentially a PR video by Blizzard about Diablo 4's Endgame and release. So here we go.
We're really excited about getting this game into players' hands, letting them experience this massive world.
A main cornerstone of D4 is play your way. As a player continues to advance through the story and into the endgame, they'll unlock a ton of brand new activities that provide meaningful progression, no matter their playstyle.
I played the early access. I am dubious that the core tenet is play your way. We'll see. We'll see, but those skill trees felt pretty restrictive to me. So it's a buzzword. It's a big company. I get it, but man, that's not a promising intro for me.
Players to be able to keep progressing in the narrative of the game. Alongside that, the whole team has worked on crafting a variety of different experiences players can pursue.
We're going to have an entire world of Sanctuary for our players to offer. There's going to never be an absence of something to do.
After the player has finished the campaign, there's a lot more game to go and participate in.
It's interesting they even say that, right? Of course there is. It's an action RPG. The campaign is a minimal component of the gameplay loop. Maybe I'm not the target audience for this. Maybe no one who's played an action RPG is a target audience for this. This feels like a very casual explanation of what the game's going to be, right?
Gain access to a special, what we call capstone dungeon that they have to complete. Once they're able to finish this capstone dungeon, they're going to gain access to the first world tier.
As you complete the world tier, it will open up the opportunity for you to go into your next world tier. That involves unlocking powerful loot, new items, and more advantages for your player to have a better opportunity at end game.
I'm not even that excited that I have to do that. I guess... Well, I guess it's going to depend. I guess if it's level progression. This essentially means I'm going to grind the campaign 4 times if I have to unlock like that. Hopefully it's an account-wide unlock, but it did say character, right? If I move that back slightly, that was a character level unlock, right?
World tier, it will open up the opportunity for you to go into your next world tier. That
Yeah, unclear from that, isn't it?
Involves unlocking powerful loot, new items, and more advantages for your player to have a better opportunity at end game.
Whether you're a fan of dungeons, PvP, or just roaming around the world, there's a way to continue your Diablo adventure long after hitting max level. As your character continues to grow in power, you'll start with the skill tree and expand out into the Paragon system.
This will be my first look at the Paragon system past that tiny little article clip that I saw of it one time now, which basically to me remains a mystery. So I'm kind of curious. This is, for me, potentially making or breaking the skill tree, because I thought the skill tree was too restrictive as it stands right now. I don't like the node system. I didn't particularly like a large number of the skills on this tree. The Paragon system is going to be an extremely important reveal for my projected success of this game, especially for my personal enjoyment with it.
A lot of the choices the players make are grounded on skills themselves and the fantasies associated with those skills. The Paragon board is a place where we're allowed to have a lot more depth, a lot more customization.
All right, let's take a look at what we're actually seeing here, because I immediately missed one already. I was listening to his words, which I shouldn't be doing. All right, let's just take a quick peek here. Not so happy with this right now.
Fantasies associated with those skills.
5 strength as a passive. I can't think of a more boring upgrade than 5 strength as a passive, but okay.
Paragon board is a place where
the same again, but
we're
intelligence.
allowed to have a lot more depth.
Oh, no, don't skip through cheap shot. That's the most interesting one so far. What is it?
Paragon board is a place where we're allowed to have a lot.
You deal 5% increased damage for each nearby enemy that's crowd controlled up to 25%. And that's the legendary node.
More depth, a lot more customization, many more options as you go.
You can rotate the board, so you can choose a different path if you're like, I want to do more strength-based things, or I want these particular boons or glyphs. You can chart your path through it, and they're really a way for you to keep.
Those are all passives. And did we see are there multiple paths forward? So, okay, you can rotate the board, which means where you approach it and start it from. I thought there were also related boards. Maybe I'll get into glyphs in a second. I don't want to overanalyze this too slowly, but I did want to look at this. So if I look at that top node, or rather the top portion of this tree, which would be rotated, there looks like there's 2 ways to the middle node and then 2 more ways to the top node of that. Maybe like 3 ways total to the center. Depends if you can go further. We'll see, I guess.
Chart your path through it, and they're really a way for you to keep expanding your character and making it uniquely yours.
That's a talking point. I mean, clearly those are not her words exactly, but does that make it uniquely yours? Maybe 50%. If there's only 2 options, is it really uniquely mine? And they're all passives, and I have to have taken a bunch of the same prerequisites to get there?
Similar to the Paragon boards is the Codex of Power. It's an in-game system that holds the aspects related to the character. You are able to complete a dungeon, and they will have a chance to drop an aspect that you can pick up.
And what this allows players to do is take items they're finding in the world and make them more powerful, turn them into legendary.
You've seen the aspect system. It's okay. The codexed aspects were always a min roll, so it allowed you to build a build even if you didn't perfect the build for it. And the aspects weren't really well balanced, in my opinion, in the early access. It seemed like there was a best in slot pretty much always for what you were doing. And I would like it to be a little bit more of a decision point each time. You know, maybe it's this character's not feeling super tanky right now, and I really need some defensive aspects, and I'm going to give up some of these damage aspects, or there's multiple types of damage aspects that I could take here. I'm going to take this one because it's better for farming efficiency, but I understand I'll be weaker versus individual powerful bosses with this, but blah, 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 right? I want to see that kind of thing. So I'm hoping we get some of that, but this doesn't look new to me.
Items.
It's really special to discover what kind of playstyle really means the most to you. Every part of Sanctuary is fulfilling and satisfying. Dungeons in particular are really close to my heart. Nightmare dungeons are going to give the players the opportunity to experience a dungeon that they might have already experienced in their past playthroughs.
There's no might about that. If we judge by the dungeon design in Act 1, you are going to have experienced every dungeon numerous times before you get to a nightmare level.
They'll enter the dungeon with a found sigil that alters the playstyle and the intensity of the dungeon.
They're more difficult, and they have additional objectives, and then they also have
It's the first time we've heard about additional objectives. That's kind of a nice add, if that is the case. The objectives in the previous dungeons up till now have been not the greatest. So adding additionals, hopefully more challenging ones and hopefully more interesting ones, might be fun, depending.
affixes, which add a degree of difficulty for you and your group to work through.
One of my favorite affixes that you can find in Nightmare Dungeons is actually called Hellgate. Occasionally, these portals will open up throughout the area that will just pour out different monsters that aren't native to that region for you to also be dealing with while you're trying to handle everything else inside the dungeon. There's over 120 dungeons to play through and find in Diablo IV, and any one of them can become a Nightmare Dungeon by finding a Nightmare Sigil and then using it to activate the Nightmare version of that dungeon space.
Everything's a little darker, everything's more difficult. It's going to add a little bit of a twist of flavor on your particular dungeon.
I hope it adds a lot of flavor, because this is going to be the end game for those of us who are planning or attempting to spend large amounts of time in this game. Farming dungeons is absolutely going to be the end game. So let's hope it is pretty exciting what they add, and let's hope it's pretty diverse as well. Not getting a ton of information here.
There's some targeted activities in Diablo IV that suit what you're feeling in the mood for.
The Forces of Hell are starting to have more influence in certain parts of Sanctuary in the vast interconnected overworld of the experience. And as the players are going into Helltide areas, you're going to find even more powerful monsters. And by killing them, they'll be able to gain these special shards they can take to go and use to purchase these big rewards that are available at these caches that are found literally throughout Helltide areas.
The sky darkens and the rivers run red, meteors fall from the sky, and the monsters get harder. We really want to create new experiences for the players. There's one I really like called Whispers of the Dead, which you get from the Tree of Whispers. The Tree of Whispers is grim and a little gruesome.
I think that's a meta currency they're talking about. We haven't seen this at all. That wouldn't have been in the beta at all. That's kind of cool to hear. I wonder what it will be giving us. What can we use the meta currency for?
But it's also something mystically haunting and kind of beautiful.
The tree has a little bit of a grudge against our players, and it would like for them to go serve its needs. So you're going to go serve these bounties, gather different rewards, different items, and bring them back to the tree in hopes that it can exchange you something really meaningful.
Maybe you're going to go to the Fractured Peaks and take out some werewolves that are rampaging in a town. They're contained activities that you can do alone or in a group. We really wanted to create variety for people to be able to spend time where they wanted to in the world. It's very cool the way it's been put together, and I can't wait for people to see it, to be honest.
In Diablo IV, we have a focus on the world of Sanctuary. And there are parts of that world that we call the Fields of Hatred, where Lilith's presence in Sanctuary has begun to seep through and manifest these poisonous areas throughout the world. When players go to these regions, they get to engage in player versus player conflict.
Ooh, haven't heard anything about player versus player conflict yet, so this is kind of exciting to hear about. Let's see what they have to say.
These offer opportunities for the player to collect shards. But there is a little bit of a catch. In order to get these shards back to town, you will need to purify them. Other players will definitely know that you're attempting to purify your shards, so you'd better be prepared to fight if you're going to be playing any PvP, and be prepared that you might lose.
So this is a camp point then? So if you find this area, it wasn't clear to me if this was an instanced area or if it was a temporary spawn area, but there's going to be a spot where everyone with all the loot that you want to come collect is going to come to. I mean, that is definitionally a camp point, right? That you're going to see players attempting to camp that in some way or another. I'm kind of curious to see how they've thought about that system. What stops me, for example, from gathering 8 or 10 of my friends and just deciding we're going to gate camp this location, and anyone who tries to bring in their stuff is going to get killed and we steal it?
Some stuff in the meantime.
Once they've got the purified shards, they can take these, go back to nearby towns to sell them, and then use that to buy a whole bunch of like interesting cosmetic items and rewards.
So that vendor's the mystery vendor. Are these purified items going to use the murmur stuff, or is this just placeholder art or some other system?
A place for people who really love PvP and want to still get loot and still increase their character's power. If that's the way they want to play, they can.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that's a good idea yet. I mean, I got to give them more credit than that. Clearly, they've thought about this for a minute and played it. So I hope there's more to that than what we saw in that explanation, because that sounds terrible right now. You go and farm this stuff, and then you have to go to this point, and there's some dude camping it, and he just kills you and takes your stuff. And you're like, you do that once, you go, well, why wouldn't I camp and kill that? And then you go, well, I need to be a bit stronger. I'll bring 3 of my friends, and suddenly we're just ganking somebody.
Launch is just the beginning. One of the things we're really focused on is creating a living, breathing set of updates for players to engage with after the game has gone live.
It's really just going to be a way to keep coming back and experiencing more Diablo IV in fresh ways.
We're really eager to hear all of your experiences and just enjoy the...
I like half believe this, right? This is clearly marketing, but another part of me believes that people who have been creating and developing this game for months and years at this point on end are a little bit excited to see what it does on release. I just hope the feedback that I want to give them, that I'm going to end up giving them, is the feedback they want,
entire
right?
story with you all.
All right, well, not a lot to that one. The most exciting part about this for me was the Paragon reveal. And exciting wasn't really what I found that to be. It seemed to be almost entirely passives, and pretty boring passives at that. Nothing transformative. If that's the case, then most of what we saw in the early access and beta is going to be the game. And the game was well put together in terms of visuals, performance, etc., but not particularly exceptionally interesting in terms of skill builds, or, to my knowledge, particularly diverse in terms of skill builds. That node system with no major changes that we saw in the Paragon system is going to really be a problem. So hopefully there's just more in that Paragon system that we just don't know about, right? Like maybe those intro levels that they showed us 3 or 4 times of these kind of boring passives are going to be a little bit different by the time they get to the middle and late stages of that tree. Hopefully there's some interesting competitive choices there. Hopefully there's some transformative, impactful nodes that are going to really reshape some of the ways that your abilities work. But otherwise, it's going to be pretty quick to optimize builds out of that, and pretty repetitive and pretty one-dimensional, that system. So fingers crossed that the Paragon board is a little bit more interesting than the few that they hovered for us. All right, chat. This is my first attempt at a reaction video. Let me know what you think, and leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you soon.